Hello. Today we have Christine McInnes. She's an advanced reproductive reflexologist and holistic healer. She unblocks held emotions in the womb space by providing energetic sessions, which create space for more creativity and flow. Christine has decades of experience in the fertility awareness and holistic reproductive health support industry. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I love your podcast, so it is such a pleasure to be a part of it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So there's a lot that we have to discuss today. And I would love to just jump right in and find out a little bit about you personally, how you came to this work. Yeah, in your own words, what you're doing, all of that.
Mhm. So I work in the area of supporting hormone health, fertility, perimenopause, painful cycles, menstrual migraines through kind of a holistic energetic perspective. So
Okay.
reflexology and acupressure are some of my main modalities. They are great tools to help shift how the body is responding and interacting with hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll also bring in lovely things like breath work, lifestyle factors, and the mindset that often can come in when your body kind of can feel like your enemy at times. And that's kind of how I came into this. So I grew up in a family where menstrual pain was normalized.
Okay.
My mom suffered from horrible periods, migraines twice a month,
Mm-hmm.
ovulation and menstruation.
Yeah.
And then I saw my sisters going through the same thing, and PCOS and ovarian cysts.
Wow.
And missing school, missing work was just like oh well, because it was so normal. And I somehow didn't have a severe kind of as severe a situation as them.
Right.
And I just remembered looking at that and I'm like, they act like it's so normal, but this can't be normal. We're not meant to live like this. We're not meant to miss days of our month every month because our bodies are just doing their thing. So kind of from a young age, I started wondering, hey, how can things be different in this area?
That's really interesting because you are, like you said, period pain is normalized. Sometimes it's normalized, like, okay, this concept of missing school or work, right? Like sometimes that can be a good thing to like give yourself and your body space. But I think what you're talking about is something quite different than that, like kind of an extreme suffering that's almost like, it sounds like expected, right? Like your mother had this and then that was passed down and your sisters had it. And so like even you were maybe the odd one out by not having it, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's an expected thing that you would, quote unquote, suffer that much. Yeah. Is this what you mean when you talk about generational menstrual issues?
I think generational menstrual issues, well, often there's a genetic or a family sort of pattern when it comes to menstrual issues. So that prevents a lot of people from seeking treatment or seeking help. Because when we see our mothers have an issue and their mothers had an issue and their mothers had an issue, that's just the belief. That's what a period is. That's what our menstrual health is. And then also, even when you do realize the whole world isn't living this way, although far too many people do accept it, you don't feel like there's a way out because everyone else has suffered this way. So there's definitely an aspect of accepting your lot and suffering unnecessarily.
Yeah. It's interesting because what you're saying is like, and challenging me in a good way, like my own bias, because like I come from a family where the generational menstrual orientation, let's call it, is kind of a positive one, you know? And so I'm
Mhm.
always trying to like make space for people's period pain because I didn't see my mom suffering. I've never really suffered a lot, you know? And so being in this work, you've got people, a lot of people in this womb space like me that are there because they love their cycles and it's
Yeah.
their guide and their container. But I've met so many amazing practitioners that are there because they really had some pain and some issues to overcome, and that's how they came to this work.
Oh, and I love that you love your cycle. And I believe that having these generations of pain, it's not a sentence for you. There's a
Yeah,
way out. And that's what I see in my practice all the time is I see things start to shift for one person. And then hopefully that'll go into the next generation. I have a lot of clients who have teenage daughters, and then I can work with them, and then they can bring these same perspectives and practices to share with their daughters, and hopefully help break that cycle of period pain being normalized through the generations. Um,
yeah. That's powerful.
yeah,
For as much as I think about cycles, and as much as on the other hand, as I've thought about like, breaking generational cycle, like other kinds of cycles, and fit be
yeah,
they addictive cycles or, cycles of addiction, cycles of poverty, cycles of, self-abuse, whatever those are, abuse, even straight up. I've not thought about that of breaking the generational menstrual
mhm.
cycle, if you will, big cycle, right? That's
Yeah.
passed down. So that's really interesting. Another thing about that I could share is that my mother has always like said, well, the menopause, like it's fine. I didn't really suffer, but my mom told me I wasn't really going to, so it just wasn't a big
Mhm.
deal. Like she attributes a lot of the lack of her pain to this kind of generational positivity about it.
I think there's a couple of reasons that can apply. Because I've thought about this a lot. I work with a
Okay.
lot of people in perimenopause. Um, so part of it is the mindset work. Our minds are powerful,
Mhm.
and often we will feel what we expect to feel. So if you're going into it with a relaxed, positive sensation, that's definitely going to help you have less negative symptoms.
Yeah.
Um, which I think is just so fantastic. And then there is just the genetic lottery,
Right.
basically, of
Yeah.
it does tend to be a link between if your mother experienced this, usually you're kind of in a similar range as far as the age that menopause happens and how hard of a transition. But one of the main drivers of perimenopause symptoms is stress.
Mm,
So if you're not stressed about it,
yeah.
that's already.
One less thing to stress about. Should help, right? Yeah. So that is a really interesting conversation on generational menstrual orientation. I feel like that we've got a new term now.
Yeah,
Using cycles like a
yeah.
twice. I don't know, it's a little too meta. Um what this is also making me think about though, and on the generational thing, and something that I saw, all over the work you're doing, is this thing of breath work and womb work around like hormonal headaches. And that's really a good bridge in from the generational thing because I have a daughter who really suffers from migraines. Now, I don't necessarily think they're hormonal because it's been going on for a long time, but it's definitely a new territory for me.
Mhm.
And I'd love to hear from you about, yeah, these hormonal migraines and how you've had like mitigated those, and what you do to help people through
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with them was seeing my family members with it, and I was
Okay.
like, "Okay, well, that's really challenging. How can I help?" And, kind of, it was part of me being interested in working in a healing career generally. But then I had my first child and they hit me hard and it was debilitating. I was losing 3 to 4 days because I would have about 2.5 days of like severe ice pick pain. And then you have a bit of like a hangover stage afterwards where you're just you're not yourself. And I had this beautiful newborn baby and I just wanted to have this experience of, lying on the floor, reading stories, stacking blocks. And I would have days where I could just barely function. I wasn't functioning really. And I also had recently trained up in what I'm doing now. So I knew there was a link between it was actually ovulation based for me. So I had a strong estrogen dominance factor that was leading into it. So with migraines, people are prone to migraines generally, and then you have a number of triggers that build up and then result in an attack. So hormones are just one trigger that can build to a migraine attack. And when you get your hormones to a point where they're in a really nice balance and your brain's very happy with the ebb and flow, then that can prevent that being a trigger for migraines. But I can go into that.
No, that's
more
really...
in other places, but but yeah, for me, so I'm just like, okay, I went to the doctor and I told her I'm getting these migraines every time I ovulate. And she's like, well, how would you know that? And I'm like, I've been tracking my cycle for, I don't know, 15 years at that point or something.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, I know when I ovulate. And she's like, okay, well, I can't do anything about that anyways. Here's some more pain meds. And I'm like, well, can't we like do some hormone testing or look at like, no. So I left that feeling very disappointed by just the level of dismissal from a doctor who was actually really amazing through some other reproductive health issues previously. So I was really surprised that the menstrual migraines were dismissed so heavily. But then I'm like, wait, I know this stuff. I can see if my reproductive reflexology work can help. And I did see a naturopath and got one supplement to help with the estrogen function. And I started incorporating breath work, started becoming more aware of my early warning signs with the migraine. And then it kind of prompted me to learn a little bit more about acupressure in regards to headaches and migraines.
Nice.
And when all of that came together, I found myself starting to be able to stop the migraines as soon as I felt them coming on.
Very powerful.
And now it's still a thing in kind of my life I have to be considerate of. But I have about 5 days after my second kid, they actually ended up turning into menstrual migraines, so more around menstruation. So now I know that this is a stage where I'm prone to them. So for the 5 days around my period, I have a number of things I avoid. I do breath work and acupressure practices every day. Not talking a lot, like 5 to 20 minutes. And I just watch what I eat and my blood sugar. And it prevents the migraines from happening.
Well, so that is a win for, menstrual cycle awareness.
Yes.
That is definitely that in practice, and really cool that even if you felt dismissed by the doctor, that was really great in other areas. It's pretty cool that you had the wherewithal to go in there and know, these are when I'm ovulating. How would you know? Because I track my cycle and I know.
And it's not, a lot of general practitioners just don't have that knowledge. So it's not that they want to avoid it. It's just not in their realm of how they work with clients. So it's really important for us to have that knowledge and empowerment. So, maybe they don't know everything. They play an important role in our healthcare, but they're not everything necessarily. So
Absolutely. Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's a very good point. So you mentioned that in your own journey, you were able to get to the point of kind of healing yourself, applying what you knew to yourself to help. First of all, knowing about where you're at in your cycle and knowing that you're kind of prone to it in that time.
Mhm.
But also you mentioned the triggers for migraines and trying to avoid that, or in a way, how I'm seeing it and understanding is like mitigate or lessen the impact from a trigger of
Yeah.
onsetting for one. And is that where the breath work comes in?
Yeah, so a lot of the time it's our brain
Mhm.
is stuck in this fight or flight mode, this sympathetic nervous system response for a long time. And when we're in that state, um, think of it like our brain is kind of in this heightened state of stress all the time. So, as a migraine sufferer, when you're higher up on the level and say the migraine threshold is a little bit above that, it doesn't take much to push you above your threshold when you're operating in that go, go, go mode all the
Mhm.
time. Breath work is amazing for helping to switch you from that go, go, go mode to your rest, restore, and digest mode. So breath work gets that, it's
Nice.
called parasympathetic nervous system
Yeah.
activation. And when you can have pockets of your day where you're letting the body fully come into that nervous system response, it's going to lower um, how close you are to your migraine threshold. So it's very powerful for that. It's powerful for hormone health in another way, just based on how well our body both takes in and moderates hormone levels when
Mhm.
we're stressed versus when we're not.
Yeah.
Um,
Very cool.
so yeah, I use breath work for both for myself and I encourage it in my clients as well, um,
Yeah. Very
as a
cool.
way. Yeah,
Did your uh migraines, and I'm sure you're highly aware of this, but I'll let you answer the question. Did
yeah.
your migraines that you were experiencing begin to have an impact on your relationship with your cycle ever?
Um, that's a really good question. I think I was pretty good at being able to see it as two separate parts of myself
Mhm.
because I had a really good relationship with my cycle
Right.
beforehand. So I came
Right.
into it with this knowledge of like loving the time with my flow because that's a time to get quiet and slow down and turn inward. Um, I got really angry at the migraines because it affected my ability to just like sit and journal and like have a nice bath and all the things I love to do
Yeah.
when I am on my bleed. Um, but I never saw it, I think, as um, like a permanent part of my cycle. It was kind of like this like extra thing that jumped on, and I'm like, all right, got to get you off again. You're not welcome here.
I love that. That in itself
Yeah,
is probably really powerful as well for,
yeah,
yeah, for moving through that.
yeah.
Very, very cool. So I have got to talk to you about reflexology, or drill a little bit more into that. We've talked about this breath
Mhm.
work and super cycle awareness. Let's talk about reflexology because that seems to be a major thing with you.
Yeah, so reflexology is my primary modality. So I
There you
work
go.
in person with clients, providing reproductive reflexology, as well as if I'm doing virtual work, I'll usually coach people through some self care practices at our
Hmm.
reflexology points. Um, it is such a powerful therapy to help support hormones. I see huge changes in clients with this. So reflexology in general is a therapy where the theory is that points on your feet, hands, and head
Hmm.
correlate to organs, glands, and systems of the body. So by palpating these points, we're helping to send signals through our nervous system that help to improve the function of these other areas of the body.
Love
So,
that.
you can get a full body massage effect with that relaxation
Yeah.
just through pressing points on the feet. Amazing for that parasympathetic nervous system response. Um, yeah, it is. And because it's not an overly invasive therapy, a lot of people like it. You don't have to be unclothed. You don't have to necessarily like, have a lot of equipment for this. So it's very, very accessible to people. But where my specific training is in something called Reproflexology, coined by Barbara Scott, the author of Reflexology for Fertility, who she is amazing. So this is reflexology where we also bring in some lifestyle and kind of big picture support. So we're also trained to look at those hormone panels, look at those blood tests, look at kind of what else is coming into the big picture.
Yeah.
And then the hands-on portion, it's a little bit different than standard reflexology. It's very slow and gentle because we're working the endocrine system, which is a very, very subtle system to work. Often people will fall asleep quite quickly because it just has such this relaxing effect.
Yeah.
And we're also trained to look at the underlying emotional cause of the hormone health not functioning optimally. So it really helps to release emotions that are held in different parts of the body, including the womb space, which is always challenging when you're going through issues with your cycle. We hold a lot of frustration and often anger in that part of our body. So without releasing that, we're not going to make the progress that we want.
Yeah. So do you work with women then on releasing that pent up energy in the womb space?
Yes. So our techniques are quite good for helping to encourage a better energetic flow through the pelvis and the ovaries and the uterus by working on those reflex points. And then that's also where I do love to bring in some breath work and mindset and journaling around it as well to kind of supercharge the effects of the treatment.
So just to be clear, because I'm obviously very basic when it comes to reflexology, you're saying that like there are points on our hands and feet and head that could actually help release some of this like pent up energy in the womb space. Like
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Where are they? Can you tell us?
Yes.
Could you guide a listener there?
Is the video also provided for this podcast?
Yeah, the video's on the YouTube channel. Yeah. But
so
if we
I
could,
can
you could show us, let's try to explain it.
I'll
for those
show and guide. It's not the easiest. I will be giving a set of free practices, which does demonstrate this exercise as well.
Excellent.
So,
thank you.
By video. But if you want to find your uterus reflex point and your ovary reflex point on your hands, you would find the uterus reflex point by sliding down the outside of your thumb over the little knobby bit until you get to that dip just on the inside of your wrist.
Got it.
And that's the uterus reflex point. Then to find your ovary reflex point, you go down the outside of your pinky finger, down the side of your hand, and once again, just below that initial bump, there's a bit of a dip.
Not the bump at the wrist.
It's kind of just right about here. So you're going down, there's like a little dip as you come in, then a bump, and then another dip.
Yeah, I think it's that one for me.
Yeah.
So I'm on like day 3 right now. What happens if I like press this uterus one?
Yeah, so I'll just show an exercise that you can use at any stage of your cycle, because otherwise it's getting to a whole thing. But this is a really good thing to use while you're on your bleed, because it's very common to the reflexes. So very, very simple. You just gently hold each. You don't want to press hard. Hormones, you always press lightly. So just like a light to medium pressure.
So are we holding on both sides? That's what I'm seeing you do.
Both sides at the same time, simultaneously.
All right.
And just very gently pulse. And then, if you want to join that up with, some gentle, deep breathing, or bringing your attention to your womb space and feeling it relax and release.
Yeah, I am
And then,
feeling
and then you switch.
sensations in my womb right now.
And then you can switch to the other side. And yeah, you don't want to, you're just very gently pulsing. You don't want to press too hard because otherwise then it could kind of overstimulate, right?
Yeah.
Really, this is a really great exercise for perimenopause as well, because it's very balancing. So
It is very cool. Maybe not the best thing
yeah.
for me to be doing live podcast recording, but it does just make me want to kind of like, yeah, I feel much
And
more
that was like
relaxed.
a
Like I could,
couple of seconds. Yeah.
yeah, on both
So,
sides.
and
I could,
it doesn't take long, do it like a minute each side,
oh,
a couple times a day, and it can really have an effect.
yeah, I feel really good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Whoever's listening, give it a try. We'll put in a link to the free resources for this so you can go and
Yeah.
see the video or watch the video on the 28ish YouTube as well. So, very cool. Okay. Well, one of the things that I'd love to talk to you about, one of the things I really connected with your, with your profile and what you're putting out there in the world is this concept of self-healing, right? That's
Mhm.
always played a huge role in my life. And so I believe that we all do have the power to heal ourselves. Could you talk a little bit more about that, becoming a self healer and how we do that?
Yes. I mean, I think that we're all our own best experts on our body and what's going to help that. And I think that's what I love about things like reflexology, acupressure, and breath work, because it's, I mean, if you're learning to do these on your own self, um, you're just relying on your own abilities to change your body's response to stimuli. So you have this accessibility to it. You don't need to rely on a practitioner long term or a doctor or a medication. And it's so powerful to know that your body contains everything you need to heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it just takes the desire to try and then putting some time in to start doing some practices. But I always encourage people to start with body scans and
Okay.
just start taking time every day to like sit and just like go through your body, pay attention to each part, move up and just ask like, how are you? What do you need? What's going to help you heal? If you have bad period pain, just sitting, maybe doing some gentle circles with your pelvis and just asking, what's going to help you release?
Yeah.
And if you listen, your body will tell you.
I really love that. Definitely. And that was one of the things I was going to ask you is if you have a daily practice yourself, like if you do these things daily.
Yes. Well, my daily practice is pretty simple. I just spend time in quiet. So usually it's meditation and breath work. Um, Not necessarily cycle focused,
Mhm.
except for those 5 days around my bleed,
Yeah.
where I do really have quite a few rituals around that so that I do enjoy that time and I don't
Could you share
experience
your
any pain.
rituals?
Yes. Okay. So a lot of it is kind of energetic or mental. I do a lot of journaling. So this is a great time to look at what's bugging you. So
Mhm.
we often get a little bit more irritable. We notice things that are bugging us more. And this is an amazing thing to happen to us. It's not a bad thing. You sit, I journal every day for probably 10 to 15 minutes on all the things that annoyed me that day. Um, and then I keep that list for my next stage of my cycle where I can start kind of acting on it. And like, it really just helps us get clear on what's not in alignment with how we want to live.
Yeah.
So it's not bad. And because I'm journaling, I'm detached from it. I'm not reactive. I drink more water.
Mhm.
I make sure to keep my blood sugar very level. So for me, that means eating protein in the morning and eating fairly regularly. throughout the day.
Mhm.
And then I do have that exact exercise and
Yeah.
a couple more that I will do every day, 3 or 4 times a day. You can do it. It's so easy. You could be
Yeah.
sitting in your car at a stoplight and doing that exercise.
Yeah.
And then I always do a ritual bath, which I feel is a really great way to just honor the quiet and the introspective nature of that time. And I plan ahead. I
Mhm.
look at when my next bleed's going to be, and I say no to a lot.
I
Like
love that.
I just do the bare minimum. It's not the time to be planning, big gatherings or taking on commitments.
Yeah.
That can
Yeah.
happen after your bleed, but I just create a lot of space to relax.
I love that. And
Pretty much it.
do you start those leading up to the bleed or once you start bleeding?
I start them about 2 days before the bleed and then go 3 days into the bleed. I
Yeah.
find personally, my bleeds are fairly short. Usually by day 3, I'm finishing up. So
Okay.
day 4 is when I get, most people will probably notice there's a specific point where you're feeling like kind of blah. And then all of a sudden you're like, the sun's come out. Like
Yeah.
it just feels like you have this little energy rise. So for me, that usually happens on day 4. So I
Okay.
don't need to continue them.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of 2 days before or even a day before, whatever, I call that, and I don't know if I got this from my mentors at the Red School. Um, I might have heard them say it once, or I don't know, the call to the temple, you hear like a call and the temple of self, and
Yeah.
it's very I do experience it like that. It'll be like I don't know, an inner voice of like, shut it down. It's
Yeah.
time. It's time to go completely inward. Um,
Exactly. I love that you're respecting that
yeah,
because it's amazing when you do that, how much less cramps you have, how much less like the irritability. It doesn't feel just irritable, but just more like increased observance, which is really what the time is meant to be. It's supposed to
yeah,
be for you and for you to be caring for yourself and reconnecting with what you want out of life.
absolutely. Yeah. I like to set bleeding intentions each time. I
Yeah,
find
because what
my
are you
cycle,
releasing? What are you calling in?
yeah, and I find that my cycles usually there's like one big lesson every cycle for me. And
Ah,
so I like for me it's a practice of just making the space for it, like, okay, what is it this time? What do I need to know? What do I need to
mhm.
grow on, if you will? Or
I
yeah,
love that. And that goes back to being your own inner healer, right? Your body is teaching you the lessons that you need to know.
yeah,
And even if you think, oh, well, it's emotional, it doesn't affect my body. Everything's interconnected. So
yeah,
you're,
yeah, very cool. Well, if our listeners that are listening to you want to know more about, reflexology or any of the fertility awareness or any of the other aspects of your
yeah.
holistic approach to reproductive health and womb space energetics, where can they find you? Where's the best place for them to connect with you and interact with you?
I'm pretty active on Instagram at Willow_therapies, IES at the end. I go live every Friday with a free guided practice. So it
Nice.
could be a really great time just to check in. Feel free to DM me your I don't know, kind of questions or requests as far as a focused topic. Um, yeah, I'm also on the web at www.online.willowtherapies.ca,
Okay.
um, for a list of kind of my virtual services.
Yeah, that's great. And
Yeah.
when you're going live and for the guided practice, you said, is it like a reflexology practice or a breath work, or what kind of things could we expect from that live?
I mix it up. Sometimes I combine things together. Sometimes I do one or the other. It just depends on what the focus is and what's best going to support it. So I have one on decompressing after a stressful moment. So kind of geared towards like getting your kids ready in the morning, dropping them off at school. And then you're like,
Yeah.
I got to just like get myself back to center. So I have a guided visualization for that. But I think the week before was an acupressure routine for headaches. I do facelift massage as well. So I sometimes do routines for like lifting, toning, lymphatic drainage in the face. Whatever people want, I'll mix it up.
You're there to serve.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then you've got like a happier hormones consultation. Can you tell us what happens in that?
Yeah. So that is a 1-hour meetup. I'll go through a pretty thorough health intake form beforehand. And we chat through what you're struggling with in your reproductive health, start to figure out some kind of low-hanging fruit or things that you can incorporate in your life to help shift that. And then we go through a guided routine that I've created just for you and for where you're at. So often I'm helping people who have irregular cycles, period pain. It could be menstrual symptoms. And actually one of the huge requests I get is for people just to learn about cycle syncing. And I will just kind of go through, if you want to like schedule your work life for your cycle, I can help you work out like what meetings to have where and kind of what parts of business to focus on in different parts. But they're a lot of fun, and people always come out of it with a lot of knowledge and a practical next step, which I think is very important.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And for any listeners that would like to connect with Christine, I'm going to put her links and everywhere that you can find her in the show notes. So head on over and check that out. And thank you so much, Christine. It was wonderful speaking with you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.